So today we're going to be doing a realistic drawing like Dine with some paintbrushes. And so what we're going to be doing is this realistic type art where we make things look like they do in real life. We're going to be creating shadows using pencils and form using our lines. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is get out some actual paintbrushes in a variety of shapes and sizes so that we can observe them. We can look at their details, we can see the different parts, and we can create that realistic drawing based off of the item. Everyone is going to be given paintbrushes. You can use 3, 4, or 5 paintbrushes and arrange them however you'd like to create your composition. Then you're going to choose which paintbrush to start with. Each paintbrush is going to have bristles, a ferrule, and a handle. These 3 parts are all different sizes and shapes. So I'm going to mark at the top and bottom and then trace the sides of my brush, my ferrule, and my handle parts, just so that I get the width and the shape right. And then I'm going to go in and mark up there like I just did for the height of the bristles. Okay, now I'm going to come in and look at the details of this brush. So I'm going to start with the top of the ferrule, and I'm going to give myself just a very slightly curved line because that's going to start helping me create that 3D form. I'm going to go on and follow that with the next lines, and I'm paying attention to the spacing of those and then the details that go in between. This little dashed line is a really neat detail. I know that I'm going to be going over it with a Sharpie, so I'm not really having to double that up, just making that line. It'll get thicker soon with that Sharpie. I'm going to go in and do any letters and numbers that happen to be printed on the brush, showing the size of it. And then also the little pieces that are holding the ferrule onto the wooden handle. All right, so I'm just looking at that sizing and making sure I was happy with it. Now I'm going from the ferrule upwards. Every time I'm going from the ferrule up to give this a realistic brush type look. I want individual hairs. I don't want to go back and forth, up and down. So now I'm going to pull that back over, and I'm just going to pay attention to how this curves on this side. So I'm going to make a rounded, short, small mark. And then I'm going to go on and follow that all the way down the side of the ferrule and connect any of these stripes just with a very curved line so that we feel like it goes around the edge as it does in our realistic view. I'm going to go on and follow that whole handle down on that left side with that same thin line that just follows the contour line, the outside line of the left side of the paintbrush. Now I'm going to create a shadow. Creating a shadow gives a realistic effect because anytime there's light in a room, it's going to create a shadow on one side where the light source is on the opposite side. So what I'm just doing is kind of a little scribble, real thin, and then I'm going to rub that with my finger to blend it onto my paper. And it wasn't dark enough, so I went on and added another little bit of a mark and rub some more. You can do that until you're happy with the shadow that seems like your paintbrush is casting. And then I'm going to go over everything that I just did with a Sharpie. Okay, now that I'm going over this with a Sharpie, I want to make sure that I make even more bristles so that this looks realistic, and I want it to look like a thick, full brush like it does, the one that I'm actually looking at does. So I am still going from the top of the ferrule up, away from it, and I'm not going back and forth. I'm creating a smooth line at the top. These are individual hairs, bristles on this brush, and I want it to seem like that in my drawing. And as I finish that, I'm going to get my eraser out, and I'm going to erase over any of that Sharpie where I've got some extra pencil marks underneath it. Careful not to erase where I've already made my shadow. So I'm just going over the handle of the brush and those parts that do not include the shadow. Now I'm going to get out my water, a brush, and watercolors. I'm going to dip my brush into the water first and get that nice and wet. Then I'm going to drip a few drops in whatever color that I'd like until I've got a good solid puddle. And then I'm going to rub that on my paper right here, right around the top of my brush and down into it so that it looks like it's actually being dragged through that paint. And once I'm happy with that kind of splatter puddle that I'm creating, then I'm actually going to get to splatter paint. So I'm going to put water and more paint and then a little bit of water. And now I'm just going to tap with my finger. You don't have to tap very hard. Tap around until you're happy with the amount of splatter that you get. If you want more, you can always dip back into your water. So you're going to be doing that for each of your brushes, following those same steps, just one at a time. And as you go, just pay attention to those details and don't forget your shadows.